Oh, hello. Welcome to the studio. Miles here with the band EMEFE. Glad you're joining us today. Come on in, won't you? Today, we have an episode of EMEFE.ptx, a video podcast series where we open up our Pro Tools sessions and talk about our process. This episode is about our song Forward. We hope you enjoy. Welcome to the podcast thing. That's the intro. That's the catchy intro.
Hot.
Today we're talking about the titular Forward.
The title, the opening track.
That is an inside joke.
It is both.
It is.
It is the title. Well, the Forward is the title of the opening track. That's so true.
Should we give what context that is or just leave it?
I think we leave it.
I think it would be nice to just play the first iteration of this song. This song started, Jazz came over, we started it together, and the title of the original Pro Tools session was, in all caps, Horns Forward Party Track. I think it was labeled that because we, as we do, just, it was like, well, what do you want to do? And one of us said, I feel like I want to do a Horns Forward Party Track. Maybe it was me. We did that, and then that title ended up actually being the title of the whole album. It was just Forward because it kind of took on a more wider meaning, but that's where it started. And the name of the first bounce was Sax in 6, as you can see there, and it sounded like this. So that was the first thing. I'm pretty sure same day, Doug, you came in. I forget what really was happening, but Jazz, you and I started this song, and then I feel like we took a break, and then I think Doug came later, and we didn't have that bass line, and you just came up with that bass line extremely quickly. Before we dive in, I also want to just note that here you can see that this is the duration of the final song, but the demo up here is that long, and that's because initially we had this in the middle of this the beginning part and the sax solo and the ending. There was a whole other arc of a solo, and that was Javier's conga solo that then ended up being extracted and made into the final track of the album, its own track. And that was a discussion of like, how are we gonna have this like very long song? Are we gonna break it up into 3 parts? And then ultimately it was like, oh, let's take this and make another thing out of it. Jazz, do you remember that day?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it must have been you that said they were feeling like a Horns Forward party track. Yeah, I think you're right about, we kind of had a few hours. We had like 2 or 3 hours where we did a lot of that stuff, and then I think like we had lunch, and then Doug came later that day and did the bass, and that's where I feel like that's kind of where it started to become an MFA song was when we had the bass.
I have the bass that I recorded it on right here. If
Wow.
anyone's
Oh,
curious,
No,
this
let's
is
see it.
a Fender American Precision bass. It's passive, and it has labella flat wounds on it that have been on it like since well before I recorded on Forward. And what makes the Forward bass line awesome and unique, and with this bass being passive and chill and having flat wounds and not like a typical 5 string that has that sort of like growly uh kind of active tone that you hear in like metal or gospel or like lots of music that requires that extra boost in the low end. MFA music is not that way. So what's cool is that this is a kind of old school sounding instrument, but I have access to like a low E flat, and this tune is in E flat minor. So I came up with the, and that's
it's
all
We'll
that's
overdub it.
all
We'll
that's
overdub
all
yeah.
in the. I don't know how it sounded. It sounded good in my
it.
chin because my chin vibrated, like my jaw, the bass
No,
vibrated my
it
jaw.
was just completely silent.
Okay.
Funny.
Anyway,
We'll,
well,
we'll fly that in later.
the point is this: it gave this bass in particular gave me a lot of options for this bass line, and it allowed me to really dig in my fingers like into the strings when the intensity in the song picked up, and it also just allowed me to have this sort of pentatonic alleyway to write in for this song because it's such a forceful sound. It's forward, it's like strong, moving motion. So that's kind of we didn't have the title, but I guess that's what I was thinking when I recorded with this bad boy here.
Yeah. It also is probably good because the main part is in E flat,
I know
and
where you're going
then
with this.
finish it, baby.
I don't know if you guys ever watched if you ever watched Corn videos back in the day. Fieldy would always play the low B string, and music video director would zoom in on the low string and watch it shake. And we have that in this song because the chorus goes to the sort of relative major, I guess. I don't know. Is that wrong? I don't know. It goes to B major. The chord is B major, so I can play this fat low B to start. There it is.
Oh, there we go.
Sounds
There we
better
go.
than. This doesn't sound better than my unplugged bass through my microphone. But there you can hear the old school tone, the flat wounds, and also just how responsive the bass is with the low B.
My memory of that low B hitting like the first time. So for those of you that this is a real kind of like peek inside our experience is that like we go to Miles's studio and we record a bunch of stuff, and Miles is like at the spaceship like clicking and like nudging and like putting plugins on stuff, and we're like, okay, cool, like I don't know, and then we all leave, and then Miles spends another like 18 hours like doing the the mad scientist stuff, and then he'll send like a text with like an audio file, and we're like, oh boy, here we go. And then you hear the bounce for the first time with all the pieces kind of together, and that chorus, that first like impact of that low B, there's this, and it might have just been like the way that it was recorded or like the demo tone or something, but it was just like totally like blown out. Like it kind
yeah.
of, I don't know what the physical term for it is, but
I think
it's
I
just
literally
like,
bounced it way too loud, and so the whole mix was just like completely crushed. And I think I even remember apologizing. It's like, "Oops, sorry, I'll resend that."
yeah, but it was great, and it like,
Yeah,
I don't know, it was like there's that low, there's the fifth string, you know.
I'm still thinking about this pentatonic alleyway you're talking
Have you never been? I feel like you've lived there before.
about. Yeah, I just want you to take me on a private stroll.
There's many other stuff
No,
going
don't
on.
bring the.
There's a lot of other stuff going on in the besides the bass, but it's all in here. You see how little I have to move my hands? The whole bass line's in here. That's great.
I don't know if it's the same for you guys on the Zoom, but when Doug plays the bass, it literally goes completely silent.
No.
Yeah,
I knew it's happening.
totally.
It's not
completely
even
silent.
the sound of you
You
playing.
don't even get the
bass.
clicking flea in the hotel room sound.
Pure silence.
Yeah, great.
While we're on the topic of this chorus, I just want to like go through real quick what is actually happening harmonically there. I kind of remember a move like this is something that when we're doing it, I'm like, there's a voice in my head that's like, okay, are we gonna do this? Because it is a move that is going to be satisfying almost every time, and I think that's like made clear by like every movie soundtrack, every dramatic pop song at some point is going to go from the first key, the minor key or whatever it is, and then down to the relative flat six. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a fair terminology.
Yeah. So just to play, the whole song leading up to that chorus is all in E flat. It's all very strongly E flat. So I'm just gonna I'll play the bass, play these pianos, and what chord does the chorus go to? E flat,
B.
and then B. So
Gotta
let's
ask the
see.
chord guy over here.
Yeah. So it will always feel good to you established this one world, and then it kind of is like you realize that what's the movie where all the people are really like tiny and they're in the grass with the bugs?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about Honey, I Shrunk the
Yeah.
Kids.
It's like
Nice.
Wait,
Well,
what's the other one? There's two. What's the
Well,
other
I
one?
was thinking of Bug's Life,
yeah.
Those are
and
actual bugs.
the other one. Which is the other one? There were
Ants.
two
Ants.
ants. That's right.
Ants.
Well,
in
it's
a
like
Bug's Life.
it's like
Woody Allen,
in
right?
a Bug's Life, Ants, or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where it's like you zoom all the way in, and there's this whole world in the and there's everything seems like it's full sized, and then that's kind of okay. I'm gonna land this plane here.
We're excited to hear it.
The first half where we were in E flat is like we're in the world of A Bug's Life,
Okay.
where there's my friend, we're all like normal size, and then when you go to the B and you go to the chorus, you're suddenly zoomed in and you're seeing there's a kid that's about to stomp on the bugs, like, oh shit, like they were actually really small, and there's this whole other world that is around them.
So you're saying the B section is the moment you realize that you are a bug.
Kind of.
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
yeah.
I think that's a really great way to synthesize that.
The
Jay.
A, you're just a being, and then the B section, you become a bug.
Yeah.
I like
Yes. Yeah.
But you feel like a god.
Well, it's because you go from static, funky harmony of E flat minor, static, pentatonic alleyway, and then you go into this section with more harmonic motion that starts on the epic flat six chord, and then it's like, wow.
It does
There's a
work
whole-
every time.
There's a
It works
whole
every
world
time.
of pianos, and this is also where James starts to flex with some of the craziest inner voice writing that you maybe have ever heard. Because I just heard the trombone part of the B section, and I was like, what? What are those notes? Why did he pick those notes? I would never even think to do that. And that's kind of where EMEFE, in my opinion, gets sauce. That's where the EMEFE sauce is found.
And I think of that thing that Miles you were talking about. I think of it more like a Men in Black ending moment where it's like, oh shit, we're just like in the marble and like
Sick.
alien, you know. But it's like you thought you were somewhere, but like the new 4 chord, which in this song is that B. So this song is actually in F sharp / G flat.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's in terms of major stuff. So that B chord is actually the 4 chord. So it goes 4, 5, 6, which is one of the most satisfying chord progressions ever. And so it turns that into something relative to where you thought you were. It turns it into like, oh shit, I was on the relative minor the whole time. I thought I was home, but I was actually shifted, and it kind of like, that's where that kind of like dimensional shift comes from. And like all of these kind of cosmic harmonic things snap into place in that moment. And that's why it's such a compelling, but also like a very kind of like cliche, overused, cinematic feeling thing, because it's in every Marvel movie, every Christopher Nolan movie, like every movie in the last 25 years has used that harmonic device at some point. Batman.
And now us.
And now what is it? What is different about this progression than all other progressions? I think to me, I want to hear more from those horn voicings. I want to hear more about what's going on there.
Well, I got just the thing for you, Doug.
Thank you.
It's interesting that this is one of those things, like none of those horns, just I feel like, despite there's a lot of different notes happening, none of them are playing the root chord progression notes. So just playing this, it sounds almost just like the intro. But then when you put in chords,
Yeah, I think the magic of that stuff is that you're remembering what the horns were doing at the beginning. So it's a you have a memory of how it felt when you were kind of in the minor key, and then all it takes is just moving that bass note, and then adding some very simple like piano voicings, and all of a sudden, because of where everything is sitting in the harmony, the implication is so strong, and like we as people, like human beings, we know what that 4 chord feels like. It's like a fucking feeling that we've heard since we were born, and because we've suggested it, it just like it snaps everybody into this, oh shit, I know exactly what's happening. And that like recognition of it, like that's why pop music like uses these things so much. But it's kind of cool and fun to do it in the context of this band, because we don't do it that much, you know.
I think we've done stuff like that on this record more than any other record. There was a moment on M&D, like in terms of suspending a single idea over shifting chords, that we also talked about when Miles and I talked about that on our episode of PTX. It's just a moment, I think, for all of us when we came to this record, we threw aside the idea of there's certain rules that we have to abide by so strictly in making this record, and we trusted that we could get our sound across while doing stuff like this. And I think that's why I think it's our best record, soup to nuts, if you will, just because we took a chance of making something accessible within the parameters of the stuff that we're known for.
yeah, I also like on that, Doug, like we've been a band for so long that nostalgia is like an element of our band, like not nostalgia in the cultural sense, but like in our own personal sense and experience, where like to do something that we did years ago, like 10 years ago, or when we were in our early 20s or whatever. There's something about making music now and continuing to make music together that, like, for me at least, like I sort of confront those instincts and choose to go with them or not. And this album to me was a lot about going with those instincts and embracing them, not as nostalgic, but like trusting that if you bring something into the now from the past, it's going to be different now, even though it feels like it is something you've done before, unless you're doing the same thing verbatim. Like it's something that you should trust. The nostalgia is something to trust and to like hold on to.
And this chorus gives you the classic MFA rhythmic horn counterpoint that is so signature, and I think it's something that people identify with, particularly in the parts that Jazz writes. That just the fact that we have the main theme sort of out front, and then as that section builds, the little pokey counterpoint lower brass stuff comes in, and it just feels so exciting. It's so like there's so much energy building until it releases to that calm moment when Jazz starts the sax solo. So I think it's got everything. It's got like the pop chordal motion, and it's got the main might power theme, and it's got the MFA signature counterpoint.
Yeah, the chorus is also not too on the nose because it is not in like there isn't a backbeat. Like it's in 6 basically, right? So there's this bigger arc of like the polyrhythm thing happening. So it's not too much like Avengers, you know. It's just like evocative of Avengers, which is
It's
really
not a
I think
backbeat
what
in
MFA is all
4.
about.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not like a backbeat in 4 that's happening in the drums. I just imagine that.
Well, the harmonic motion is
It's weird.
yeah.
Yeah, what
Let's
are
talk
you
about
playing?
it.
Yeah, what are
Yeah.
you playing?
What are you playing, Miles?
I am playing a I'm playing a backbeat in 4 while accenting the chord changes, which the chord changes are what in 3. So here's what I'm playing.
Okay.
And also, I should note while we're looking at the drums, the first thing we tracked when we first started the song was this tempest loop. That basically immediately set up the thing of like, all right, here's this beat that's rolling like in 4/4, quote unquote, but then we're gonna do this over the bar line hemiola.
Yeah,
Very, very metal. Very gent.
very good.
Very
Thank
good.
you. So
Very
yeah, it's
good.
like that. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. I don't know. Yeah. So that as the drums, the drum kit sort of, I have the opportunity to like kind of dip into each time that's happening, and while also keeping it funky.
Got
Got
to.
to.
And
Got
also,
to.
recording engineers out there, aspiring recording engineers out there, you can hear in Miles's track that bleed is not as important as a great live take. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just heard a bunch of
I'll
stuff,
bled it.
but it never ever would bother me ever.
Oh yeah.
Well, this is okay. On the topic of bleed, like I said in the beginning, Jazz and I and Doug, we had this initial demo, and Hav was there too, and we had started the song, and then it was like Doug, Hav, Jazz, Miles in the room, like let's play along to this demo and re-record, like record bass, record live drums, Hav playing the percussion, and you were in the corner with just tenor. That was like the initial demo, but and so the plan was like months later, all right, let's actually try to retrack this from the beginning, all of us in the room, because we would be able to like get a cool live band take. You had played this solo, and it was a really great solo, but we were like, should we try to redo the solo, and like, can we recapture magic? And ultimately we decided that you were gonna recapture it, like we would redo the solo, but something happened and you couldn't come to that session. And so what we ended up doing was retracking with the whole band almost, and we were tracking to the session as we have it now with your solo just playing, and we like acted like you were playing in the room, but actually we actually kept the tenor solo from like all the way back. Luckily there was not a lot of bleed in the tenor solo mic, because that ended up being the final solo of the whole song. Solo in the final song is what I'm saying.
Did we retrack everything else?
We retracked me and you. Yeah,
Or
we
wait,
retracked
process,
wait.
I
You
don't remember.
retracked bass and drums under that solo?
bass, drums, congas.
Oh, but there's a click track.
We were tracking to the session, like that you're seeing right now, that we had already laid out in the demo, quote unquote.
But
the demo
was there a
became
click?
the final. There was a click, yeah. All of this,
Yeah.
there was this,
Okay.
there was the tempest drum machine
Got
that
it,
was
yeah.
going.
Yeah, okay. You can understand my incredulity if there wasn't a click. I was like,
No.
what? That's insane. You just like vibed off Jazz's solo and like, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Jazz has great time, but that would be absolutely insane.
here's the live sax solo that we were tracking to. So you can hear that we're playing in the background, but this is from months and months before, and we were tracking along to basically just that and the tempest.
Right.
Yeah.
That's dope. Very cool.
So it was just this really weird. I've never ever done this in any other scenario where, like, the whole goal of this was to, when you have a horn solo in a song, you were reacting to the horn solo live. It's like one of the opportunities in EMEFE songs, especially, to like improvise truly and like form the arc of the song. But in this case, the arc was kind of laid out by this original tenor solo, and so we just needed to like kind of follow that. And we knew when at the end when you would be hitting the high note, and then we go to the chorus. Like we kind of reverse engineered that whole thing, so that now it sounds like Jazz is just in the room soloing with the rest of the band, but in fact we were just tracking to a Jazz from the past.
That's deep. The truth is, though, that is the best way to do that. If you have to not be live, you rather have the band playing to the solo than the solo playing to the band, because that is the way it should work. Anyway, because I also played keys like comped on this, and like there is something great about the solo already being there, and you're just like, well, let me just actually only play what will serve the solo, versus when you are live, you throw in your own ideas, which can be great, but it can also, fuck things up. So yeah, I mean, I think, because I think if you listen to this solo, you have to really think about the fact that like everyone's playing great stuff that fits within the solo. It doesn't really seem like the soloist is really listening to the band ever.
Yeah, I think that
Like, man,
maybe
he didn't
just-
really play off that idea. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like big picture stuff. Like we've never really talked about like the nature of and like the role of improvisation in the band explicitly, and I feel like especially for maybe like music students or anyone that's interested in like how do we do this.
Yeah.
There is like we all kind of come from like a jazz adjacent background. We've all studied jazz in some way. Improvising is like one of the primary skills that we're like practicing and kind of like performing together when we're on stage and also when we're recording. But there's also a really important aspect of this which isn't talked about a lot. And the first time I learned about it as a saxophone player was learning about Michael Brecker and how Michael Brecker would essentially like engineer these like perfect solos in the Paul Simon kind of like pop sax solos that he did, where it was like, okay, I've got 16 bars how do I
Yeah.
kind of like manufacture the universal like perfect solo. And so there is a little bit of like solo craft when you are in this recording studio where like you want to have that kind of like spark, or like you want to have that kind of like effervescence of like, oh my god, like something magical is happening and like nobody could have thought of this ahead of time. But at the same time you want to capture that lightning and then exploit those moments as much as you can. And I feel like this track is a really great example of like something happened that was like pretty much unrecreatable. And so it's like, what do you do in that situation? You recreate everything else around that thing that happened.
That's exactly what I was saying. Is like a lot of times you're like, all right, I have these 16 measures. What am I going to do? Whereas this solo is totally a free experience of you playing whatever you want. And then we came in afterwards and created a box that would, to a listener who doesn't know, might think, oh wow, he really crafted that solo well to like this track. But
And we also had to know when the solo was ending when we were redoing it. So it's like it started with an open form that we cued in the moment, and that became the recording form that we all adhered to in the
Yeah.
subsequent session. And what's awesome, my favorite thing to do live in EMEFE, maybe period, is to play bass while jazz is soloing, especially when other instruments are taken out, like other guitars, and like when we can really start a solo from a low place, because the bass line it can start with an acknowledgement of the main groove, and then jazz will always inform me when I can break away and why and what's happening with the band that allows me to do that. And there's a really cool moment where I play a repeated variation of the main bass line that's a little rhythmically different. It's not in the exact 8 bars preceding the B section. It's just this thing that happened, and we got it back somehow on the re-record because I think we did it the first time. So it's a really special moment of distilling our live process and our live band communication into that solo. And that is really the dopest part, because then you get that big payoff where you hit those, I don't know, what do you call them on a saxophone, upper partials, the thing that ba, 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 that phrase that everybody loves about that saxophone solo. It's all set up and it's all released into that moment because of all of the work we did communicating, and we know each other so well that I could recreate the communication that organically happened in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just talking about the way we grooved, and then the way we grooved again created this entire arc that leads to that moment, that leads to the best, most satisfying moment in the song to my ears.
Solo. This is another example of the original sax solo kind of being the seed. One thing about that sax solo is because the bed that you're playing on is like this sort of static harmonic thing. You were pushing the boundaries and going inside and outside of that key. Very, very, very late in the process of this song, Jazz, had the idea of like adding in these piano chords. And so, but I feel like this moment of this sax solo is kind of like the part that like maybe inspired what then we added later. So I'll just play the sax solo moment first. Sorry, I want to keep listening to it. But
it's so sick.
That's the interaction. That's so. I mean, obviously the saxophone is amazing, but the thing that's happening between the saxophone and the bass is very organic.
Yeah. So then from there, you'll see there's this track called Piano Weird. And Jazz, do you want to just, do you want to talk about it first and then I'll play it?
Yeah, maybe I'll just preface it with an idea, which is that the thing about modal jazz like playing in one mode, which is again like a very central thing that it's like one of the core MFA things that we get to do is like we get to like experiment in this like really amazing art form, which is like modal improvisation. You want to gain trust with the audience and show the audience that like you can give them what they want and you can kind of like give them what is comfortable to listen to, and then once you establish that trust you can break that trust by playing notes that are outside of like the prescribed kind of menu of notes that are in the mode or like the correct notes to play. And that kind of contrast, that kind of like weaving in and out of in the mode, out of the mode, in the mode, out of the mode is really great. It's something that we can do to make an audience feel something when they listen to the music. And that's kind of the core idea behind this solo, or like that's where the solo kind of ended up, is that it's not just like a sax solo in like something like blank minor. You're just it's a story that you're telling that involves characters that are something that you're comfortable with, and then a character where you're like, what is that? And I don't know what that is, but that is an interesting thing to a listener's ear. So that's kind of like what we were trying to do here.
All right.
Let me get that. Let me get that. I need that.
Also happening during that whole build are this rising farfisa here. So it adds just even more. And then this is all while the guitars are.
That's pretty
Oh my
great.
god, this sounds insane.
This is the sauce.
But that's the thing, is like it's
You wanted
about
sauce.
context. Everything about this is about context. Once you establish the context, leaving the context is a feeling. It's like that 1-2 thing with Bogey, like Stewart again, right? It's like if you establish the canvas that you're working on and then you go off of it for a second, it makes people feel something, and that's the ultimate kind of like root of what those moves do. Is it's like it's a feeling, you know.
I have
Yeah.
to sign off, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love you. I love you all. Peace.
I kind of have to go too, guys. All right, love you guys. That was awesome.
Love you too,
Bye,
buddy.
Jake. Love you too.
All right, bye.
I was just gonna say that adding to these moments, Lollise played shekere on this song, in addition to playing the regular part, which was just quarter notes. She also did a couple takes of like more expressive playing. I ended up using it with the production in those jarring moments to add like.
Whoa.
Anyway,
Man, Yeah, I never noticed that. It's really tucked in.
Yeah, it's tucked in, but also the brain does. I feel like the ears don't register it when you're. It's the type of thing that's like felt but not heard, and I
Yeah,
feel
right.
like it. I'm always thinking about Beatles like psychedelic moment or something where they just play something in reverse, and then you'll just hear like up, up,
Yeah, right.
and it just
Right.
it just kind of like float, but all if you're kind of listening zoomed out, and it just kind of registers as a certain thing. So I feel like that's what the shekere is doing there.
Yeah, I think that's also something that's really important to keep referencing, especially for people that are interested in making like recorded music, is that the craft of focusing on the craft of like every sound being perfect or every element being perfect or correct or right is so much less important than like what's the story that you're telling and how are you using this medium in a way that is where you're making something that evokes a feeling in the listener, and like what do you want that feeling to be. Like that's really what it's about. It's not about like, oh, that, this is the wrong note, or like that doesn't fit, or that's just a noise, that's not part of the music. Like it's we're creating this collage. Don't be afraid
Yeah.
to make like kind of a weird collage, and then you can like edit it and turn it into what you want, but it
Right.
doesn't have to be something like preconceived as like perfect or correct.
Speaking of collage, you did a handful of piano tracks on this, and in addition to, or this was like all the way at the very beginning, like first day sort of thing, and it's just a nice thing to hear. So I'm just gonna play that. And then adding the big chords in. In the context of everything that's happening, I almost don't even want to play what's, but here it is. Like that,
Yeah.
you might not be able to hear that that's what it is, but it's doing something,
Yeah,
believe it or not.
definitely. Yeah, I think that there are so many frequencies, and we are capable of hearing so many frequencies. If we can only focus on a few frequencies at a time, it doesn't mean that we're not hearing the other ones. And those frequencies just kind of like being back there, like when I hear that piano, I don't know. This is weird, but I'm always conjured, like the image is always conjured of like a William H. Macy movie from the 90s or something, like the opening credits of like October Sky, like something with Jake Gyllenhaal in his 20s, like
Wow.
that sound is it's very emotional. There's this Japanese filmmaker named Akira Kurosawa, and he always put a scene with like really heavy rain in every single one of his movies because every one of us has a core memory of it raining, and it brings us back to that moment subconsciously. And I think that you can do that in music too, where you can throw in a texture or like a reference to something where you don't even realize it, but you're being brought back to something in your childhood where you're just like, oh shit, like I'm feeling that. I think that's a cool thing.
The very, very beginning of the song starts out with this. I just wanted to see if I could. Was this it? Where are you? Oh, here it is. It's just me counting in the horns at the beginning of the song. So without the plug-in on, it sounds like.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, that's me counting you in. I see.
Yeah, I think that was
I
that
see.
first day.
And this is you tracking Barry, but it's doing the thing where we pitched it down and it became
Right.
the Barry. So it goes from this
1, 2, 3.
to this. I feel like we should clarify because we didn't clarify this the last time we talked about it, but Lynn played the real Barry on the song. Like
Let it
we
be
didn't.
known.
Yeah, let it be known while we're talking about it. I'll just. And that mixed with your original saxes, then makes the gives it the sauce.
Yeah, definitely a lot of saxophones, but you don't really hear it
Yeah.
because it's not a very sharp sound.
Yeah, and it almost just it's like it contours it. It's the sound of all of your saxes layered. It gives it that reedy kind of. I don't know how else to describe it, but
Yeah.
it gives it a timbre. Speaking of giving it a timbre, in the next melody, I want to shout out Aani because in this hornhead moment, when they came in and tracked, they gave this horn line a shape that it really needed. So I'm just going to play the horns here.
Yeah, totally.
So like this moment right here, the trombones,
yeah.
those little things, articulation are like so important to go, ba boop ba,
Yeah.
like gives it that attitude.
Yeah.
And then you can especially hear it.
Yeah.
Here's the trombones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a good lesson in that, like, uniform horns don't sound good. Like, you need an incorrect one or like a different one to give the whole thing shape. And so, like, it's so important to think about these things like on aggregate. It's not about like each individual one being perfect and you combine them and it's all going to be perfect. It's like, no, you need it to be a little bit like looser in terms of like the parameters, and then you zoom out and you're just like, oh shit, like this has dimension, it has shape, it has like shading, it has like different values. Han has been doing this like like in painting, this idea of value is like things that are farther away are lighter because of like air atmosphere. Like mountains are farther away, they're lighter, and then they get closer to you, they get darker. It's the same thing with horns. It's like there's a value to them, and you need like you can't just all be one. It'll just be like flat. Like you need that kind of depth.
Yeah, which I feel like is with a horn section. We've been down this road, but like making sure everybody's playing something with the same articulation, with the same like taking breaths in the same places. Like there is a degree of that, but then there also should be room for like each horn player to play it their not play it their way, but like find the ways in to add the personality that they want. But that even as I'm saying that, I'm thinking back to like 2012 and how like I definitely was not talking like this back then. Like we were much more like I'd say rigid in our, even though the whole there was a philosophy of like being free and like playing, like just playing outside of our like jazz school training, but at the same time there were rules, and there still are rules. I don't want to act like there aren't rules, but
when you're a student, all you see is the rules, and it becomes the only thing that you focus on because you're trained that way. That's how people learn. They're given a rule, and it's like, if you do this right, okay, like gold star, you passed the rule, like you played by the rule. But it conditions you to see the world and to see art as a set of rules of like this binary of like, was it right or wrong? Like there's only two answers to that question. And so it takes time to kind of like if that's the two-dimensional thing, it takes time to see it in three dimensions where it's like, it's not just about playing it correctly, it's about playing it with like in the context of a story that you're telling, and that requires a little bit of like looseness and a little bit of like, that was incorrect, but it was fucking awesome in its incorrectness, you know? And I think us learning how to lean into that and to appreciate that as a quality and not as something to like avoid or be afraid of is like, I definitely learned that lesson like through making music like with this group and like with these people of like embracing those things. Yeah, it's a hugely important lesson, I think, for especially young people, just to be introduced to that idea that like, and it's such a cliche too, because like Miles Davis, like you didn't play the wrong note, you just played it I don't know, I don't know what he said, but like that idea, it's like it's a cliche, but it's like so fucking true that like it's not a wrong note, it just isn't. Like just because a teacher said that to you once doesn't mean that it's a wrong note, you know?
Just before recording this, I was editing some of our audio from our show in Chicago. We played this song forward. I think it's like maybe our third time playing it live. We haven't played it that much, and clearly as we just went through, like it was not a song we all played and performed together in the studio. It was something that was sort of some of that, but then also some just like handiwork. But we played forward as our encore, even though we played it already in the show as the first song of the show. And this version of forward where it was our encore is like so chaotically amazing. It sounds so good. I was thinking about that when you were just talking, because we seemed to access that freedom where like there's some whatever we want to call wrong notes here and there. We're all kind of, it's just like we're flying. I feel like we haven't really experienced that with this song because it's relatively new to us, but we kind of cracked something there. Here we are looking at this session where like we set this framework of this song, but now we get to actually like put it into action and like experience all the values that you just were talking about, like with this song as our sort of medium through which to like just like express, just like you know.
Yeah.
All right,
Sweet.
that is forward.
Thanks everybody.
Buddy. Thanks everybody. Bye. Just so you hear real quick what I was talking about while you're here. Here it is. Right here.
God, that is insane.